What's after economic chaos in Venezuela? As worsening oil prices have caused economic turmoil in Venezuela, many states have worsened to the point where they are open to saving electricity 2 days a week. The food shortage comes to the forefront with long lines for basic needs, and the drought situation has worsened because of the lack of water. In a few cities, protesters made the referendum to commemorate President Nicolas Maduro, who clashed with the security forces and demanded government action. Maduro, the successor of long-standing leader Hugo Chavez, shared the great gains in the opposition when he caught the popularity of the seafarer. The president has declared an emergency to lift calls for resignation, and his political future seems uncertain. Venezuela had periods of previous economic crises, but how did the current crisis come to this point? There are historical and more contemporary reasons for this. Historical, more structurally related to Venezuela's long-term dependence on a resource marine that is oil. During the oil boom, the Venezuelan governments continue to spend money that does not really hurt the productive domestic industrial sectors. This means that the country has become dependent on imports. You can buy any imports you want while the oil is flowing, but when you run out of oil, you have less resources to buy. This is a remnant we have seen in the previous decades, and we have seen it again in 10 years in the Chavez period. Then oil prices were very high, but there was little investment in the home appliance and there was too much dependence on income to buy imported goods. This has exhausted Venezuela's ability to self-regulate. The country has become dependent on imports. The second factor is the more contemporary and petrol-stat and deeply deepened in Chavez and Maduro to expropriate large segments of the productive economy. The idea was that a productive device could emerge on the basis of state-owned and employee-operated businesses. The problem with this is basically that these companies compete against better profit-making businesses that are run by the state. Perhaps the most important factor at this stage to explain why the crisis is so deep is the currency controls that were implemented in 2003 after an oil industry strike from Chavez. Money control is a precaution you take for a year or two because it is usually an incentive for corruption, and that's exactly what happens. It created incentives for production and created incentives for the purchase, stacking and subsequent resale of existing scarce goods. How do food shortages and closures affect people in Venezuela right now? The most dramatic way is basically the lack of access to everything and everything. As the shortage of domestic products increases, it means fewer product varieties, ranging from unfinished products to more manufactured products. As people try to investigate these products, it becomes a very broad line and it strengthens the black market encouraged by currency controls. Excessive prices on the benchmark and on the black market are the biggest roads people feel. We also see other ways. We have a drug problem and we see shortcomings for hospitals. If you have access to the dollar, then it means you have access to the land market. The only thing I will add is to affect disproportionately the different parts of the population. If you can access the dollar, then you have access to the black market and you can still access fairly well-stocked stores in the rich parts of town. Most of the other products that have a regulated festival organized by the government are difficult to find and are very determined when they find it. You have assigned days to buy them based on your national identity card, and this decision-making process has the effect of changing how people manage their daily lives. This may not be uniform and class distinctions play a role in it, but are people in Venezuela examining the causes of the crisis? There is no uniform approach. It was rejected at a very high level that the Maduro government owed tremendous chrysanthemums in large numbers. People blame Maduro, but they blame him for various reasons. There are very high levels of how people have experienced polarizations in the past 17 years, especially in Chavez. They watch the current crisis with these polarized lenses. I would like to state explicitly that the government is now at a very low level of popularity. It tends to suggest that there is no polarization. However, where there is polarization, there are reasons for people to chew. Processor Chavistas blamed Maduro for thinking that the policies they applied were ineffective. Ideologically, Chavistas blames Maduro for being insufficient and socialist. Then there are always some people who are opponents of the Chavista government. There is no single explanation of where one is guilty. They are accusing the government of a great and important degree. Do you think Maduro government can get rid of this crisis? Can the survival criterion be completed by 2018? I think the safe bet is no, so the question is, Will it be clear under which circumstances Maduro will not complete his mandate? My understanding is that it is balanced to a degree with a slight rise in oil prices, even though the crisis is bad. This has taken the Chavista government for a while and uses it to postpone the recall referendum beyond 2016. It is important to note that if the referendum to be held in December takes place after December 2016, whoever is the vice president, Maduro will not survive, but that does not mean Chavismo will survive. The great resistance of the government to the opposition, and this is a little paradox, is to stay in power. The opposition needs a number of figures to stay in power in order to take responsibility for the measures that are being implemented. These will be painful, difficult measures to bring the Venezuelan economy back. The opposition does not want to leave the case. Which sectors of Chavistas, rightly and logically, are discussing with the opposition, because they are happy that they have escaped from the hyper-unpopular Maduro even among the Chavista. Later,